Welcome to the demonstration of Tzunami Deployer. During this demonstration, we will perform a migration from Documentum to SharePoint 2010 using Tzunami Deployer. This presentation will go over the four main steps of the migration process. First, we will export the source content from Documentum. This can be done from within the deployer or as a standalone process. We will then load the content to a deployer project. Next, we will perform the virtual deployment along with all of its relevant configurations. And finally, we will commit our migration specifications to SharePoint 2010. We will start by creating a new deployer project. When we click on File, New, Deployer will create a new project for us to work on. We are prompted to give our project a name. We'll call it Documentum Demo. Next, we specify the project folder using the Browse button. Here we choose our source and target systems from the list. For this demo, we'll choose to deploy from Documentum and deploy to our target SharePoint 2010. Our new project is now ready for migration. As you can see, a deployer project is divided into two areas. The top area is for the source content, in our case, the content that's extracted from Documentum, and the bottom area is for the target, SharePoint 2010. In order to load the Documentum content, we must first export it. This is done by right-clicking the source panel of the deployer window and selecting Export Documentum to TDX. This opens the Tzunami Documentum exporter. Tzunami Exporter for Documentum extracts the content according to your specifications and turns it into a file format that the deployer can read, the TDX. The export folder will contain the actual files and data extracted from Documentum, along with the TDX and STDX files, which are XML files that contain all the information regarding content, metadata, structure, and so on. The Documentum exporter wizard appears. We are prompted to enter our credentials to connect to Documentum, along with the name of the doc base we would like to export from. In the General tab, we decide which information we would like to export. Here we have several options, such as choosing the documents along with their security, their versions, and to export virtual documents as well. In the lower section, we decide how the exporter will handle links. Since in Documentum, an item can appear in more than one location, and this behavior is not supported in SharePoint. The Advanced tab is used for performing more complex actions, such as specialized handling of custom object types. For more information, please contact the Tzunami support team. The next step will be to navigate through the Documentum containers and select the content we wish to export. We'll choose our presentation folder along with its subfolders. When exporting large amounts of content, the filter can be used to export only certain items which comply with certain conditions. For example, we can choose to only export content that was created before a set date. We will now choose a destination folder for the export, where all extracted data will be saved on the file system. The exporter begins the export process. At this point, the exporter is extracting the content from the source, along with all of its structure, metadata, and security information. The export is now complete. When the export is done, we can name our Documentum export and load the content to the source panel of Deployer. Once Deployer is done loading, we can explore the hierarchy of the Documentum content and see that the same exported content now resides in the Deployer project, along with all of its metadata. Similar to the look and feel of Windows Explorer, Deployer displays the content from the source with a tree view on the left and with a list view on the right. This allows us to easily browse through our content and understand our content structure. In the Target panel of Deployer, we will load the data from our target SharePoint 2010. This is done by right-clicking the Target panel and selecting Connect to SharePoint. We now have the connection wizard. We are required to specify the connection details. First, we will fill in our server address. This can be done by entering the server's name or IP address. To make sure you have the correct information, please consult with your system administrator. Next, we enter our credentials. The user connecting to SharePoint must have sufficient privileges in order for Deployer to write the changes to SharePoint. Please refer to our Tzunami Deployer user guide for more information regarding permissions. After the connection to the SharePoint server was made, we choose which web applications we would like to load into our project. We are now able to choose how we would like to load our SharePoint structure. It is recommended to load the minimum amount of content required for your specific migration project. First, we decide which sites to load into the project. For this demonstration, we'll select the site collection named Demo. When the Read Subsites option is checked, Deployer will read all subsites under the parent site. We now move on to reading the content. We can choose to read none of the lists, only the libraries, or all of the lists. The same applies for reading items. We can read none of the items, the latest version only, or all versions. When no sites and no lists are selected, the loading process is expedited and we are able to reload any content from our SharePoint Target panel at any time. Under the Active Directory tab, we can select the domains we would like to read into the project. This enables Deployer to retrieve a list of all available users and groups. When we are satisfied with our structure, we move on and Deployer begins reading the selected content into our Deployer project. Deployer is able to read all necessary content from the SharePoint server, including custom and global templates. Once Deployer is done loading, we can explore the hierarchy of the SharePoint content. Now that both our source and target are loaded into our project, we begin our deploy phase and start performing our virtual migration. To deploy content from our source Documentum to our target SharePoint 2010, we can use several methods. The first and easiest of which is to drag and drop our selected content to the desired destination in the target. We'll select our presentation folder and drag it to our demo site collection. The Deploy wizard appears to guide us through the process of deploying the selected items to SharePoint 2010. In the first step, we choose if we would like to deploy the files along with their security. Choosing to deploy the items without their security settings will make the deployment process faster. We'll deploy the files without their security for the purpose of this demonstration. We start by specifying the global settings. For example, we can decide how Deployer will name files with duplicate file names. We can also choose the specific number of versions to be deployed. Under the List tab, we are able to control some of the list settings in SharePoint, such as supporting major and minor versions and attachments. In the Define Deployment Structure panel, we have the ability to control the hierarchy of our deployment, including site and list templates, folders, and so on. The Deployer automatically suggests how to deploy the items from Documentum to the corresponding SharePoint 2010 items. We first decide how to migrate our main folder. We can choose a site template from the drop-down menu, which has a list of all of the default SharePoint site templates, as well as the option to use custom templates. For example, we choose to deploy our presentation folder as a team site. This makes Deployer suggest that the folders within it will be migrated as document libraries. We can change the source structure as we please. Deployer also gives us the option to migrate our content with or without the hierarchy structure. If we choose Flat Deploy, the items are all migrated on the same level and the hierarchy is not deployed. Now we will perform the property mapping step. On the left, Deployer displays a list of properties that exist in the documents from the source Documentum, and on the right, we can view a list of properties that are available for us from the target SharePoint 2010. Deployer automatically suggests some of the basic mappings. For example, the created and modified properties are already mapped. Deployer enables us to map any remaining properties according to our specifications. We select the property from the source list and the matching property from the target list and click Map. The link above can be used in case the target has fewer properties than the source. This will tell Deployer to add any of the missing properties we select. We'll choose to maintain the ID, keywords, and subject from the missing properties list. Now that we have finished mapping our properties, we need to map the associated values of these properties. Deployer has already mapped the default value. As we did for the property mapping, we can select our own value mappings using the Map button. We are now ready to deploy. During this phase, Deployer applies all of the deployment settings and mappings we have selected. When the deployment is finished, we can view the report and view any potentially problematic items. This allows us to make any modifications prior to the commit phase. Since we do not have any warnings, we'll click Next and Done. We are now able to take a look at the results of the deployment. Within Deployer, we can view the properties in the target panel and confirm that the metadata associated with the items which we plan to migrate to SharePoint 2010 are all preserved according to our specifications. Assuming that we're satisfied with the migration, we will commit the changes to SharePoint. By committing our project, we tell Deployer to perform all the changes that we made virtually and write these changes to SharePoint. We'll right-click the new site and choose Open in order to open it in SharePoint 2010 via Internet Explorer. We can take a look at all the site content and see that the migration was successful. This concludes our Tzunami Deployer demonstration for the migration of content from Documentum to SharePoint 2010. We thank you for your time and welcome you to visit our website in order to download an evaluation version of Tzunami Deployer for Documentum and learn more about the Tzunami family of products.